Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Good evening. How you doing? Fade to Black. Yes, it is. It's Fade to Black. Today's Tuesday, August 18th, 2026. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Let's do this, man. What an amazing week here on Fade to Black. Last night, Randall Carlson was here. The great year, the beard of knowledge in the house last night. Great conversation. Tonight, Daniel Branco is with us. We're going to be talking about the mystery of consciousness, what it is. He's a neuroscientist, and we are going to get it all on the table tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tomorrow night, Preston Dennett is here. We're going to be talking about the healing powers of E.T. Yeah. And then Thursday nights are once a month, AMAAJA, where you get to ask me anything. Yeah. So much fun. And that will wrap up the week on Thursday night. Tonight, we're going to talk about consciousness. Daniel Branco's here. His new book, Spirituality, Spiritual Initiation for Rational People, is out. The links for that are below. Daniel's he's a neuroscientist. I can go on, a neurologist, right? And all of those things that I am not, that I pretend to be. But we're going to be talking about consciousness tonight. He's going to be speaking with Suzanne Ross at her conference down in San Diego. I'm going to try to arrange some time to go down there, maybe hang out for a little bit. I was there last year, a great conference. And we'll get around to all of that tonight. Consciousness is a big deal. And one of the things that, and I talk about this often on the show, and I wish everybody in the world would just listen to me and maybe take a little slice of it and change things, because consciousness is interesting. And we all have it. And what is it? Well, here's the thing for me. There's a lot of things for me when it comes to consciousness, but why is it that we are able to do laughter, crying, taste, seeing, enjoying, sadness, and then contemplate the contents of an atom that we can't see, discuss that all the way to the size of the universe, right? Conscious, we are able to do all of these things, and yet we're individuals. And what somebody else likes or dislikes or believes or disbelieves or whatever, and I do my thing, that's consciousness. And it's so much more than that, of course. But so what do I enjoy? What does consciousness give me? One of the things that it gives me is the ability to help others. And I do it constantly. And it's what I am rewarded by that. Now, a few minutes ago, I helped somebody that's getting out of a hotel and moving into an apartment. And I see that. I see the money that's needed. And I'm looking at this. Now, here's the thing. Now, I immediately just went, up, 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 boom, money's in their account. And didn't think about it at all, because I knew I was going to get that consciousness bliss that I've just helped somebody else. And that joy. Now, yeah, they get their apartment. They get to do, they get out of the hotel and, get rid of a little stress. Sure, all of that is there. But the gift is mine. And I get to, that's consciousness. Where does it come from? Why do I get to enjoy it like I do? And why don't we take that ability to have bliss and joy and help others? Why don't we do more of that? Because that's what consciousness gives us. Puts a smile on my face. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Daniel Branco is with us. His links are below throughout social media, and we also have it over on our website. I would like to welcome for the first time to Fade to Black, Daniel Branco. Hey, Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jimmy. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Do I call you doctor?
No, only if you like. You don't need to call me doctor.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, your ego doesn't come into play when it comes to that. Have you ever said to anybody that maybe was rubbing you the wrong way and said, you know what, man, it's doctor to you, pal? No,
I don't remember having used that card ever. I don't think I ever needed.
Man, if I had a PhD, I'd have a T-shirt. Right? PhD. Yeah. You get the first time guest disclaimer. So let's get that out of the way, Daniel, so we can start the show, which is this. Daniel, it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where the conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends. But we're going to end as friends. Now, you have to accept, and then we can move on.
Yes, accept.
Yeah. See, that's the bliss that I get. That's the bliss that I get. Let's start with this really quick. Just really
I appreciate the
briefly.
opportunity to give you that bliss.
It's such a wonderful thing what consciousness gives us. And we'll talk about all of that tonight. I want to talk just a little bit, your background as a brain doctor, right? A neuroscientist and a neurologist. What is that exactly?
What does it mean to be a neurologist? And well, I decided to pursue medical school because I wanted to understand consciousness. I wanted to understand how the brain creates consciousness. So that's how it all started for me. It was not that I decided to. A neurology is a specialty that you pick in medical school. Usually after you've started medical school, I went to medical school because I wanted to study the brain, particularly how the brain creates consciousness. So that was a lifelong question that I wanted to answer that question. So eventually I'm from Brazil. So in Brazil, I did my medical school there. I did my residency in neurology there. And then, but I spent the whole 5 of the 6 years in medical school doing brain mapping research. Part of what I did was I ran electrophysiological studies in human brain, slices of human brain.
Okay.
And obtained from epilepsy surgery.
Sure.
So, and also part of my research was related to studying the living brain during surgery, like by applying electrical stimuli to the cortical, to the cortex of patients undergoing epilepsy surgery. So that was part of it. And then at some point I started developing functional MRI studies. That's how I ended up going to Harvard after my residency for a postdoc in brain mapping for epilepsy and brain tumor surgery planning. I don't know if I answered the question, but
yeah, okay. I love this.
Okay.
Because my next question, my brain is a dark place. Okay, so you have to accept that it's a dark, messed up world.
To black.
Yeah, it is. It is completely faded to black. Is this 6 years in school, residency, all of that, brain map?
Yeah.
They don't teach where consciousness comes from. What?
No.
what did you, right? So
And there
your
is a good reason
goals,
for that.
well, but let me get to the question, good
Right.
sir. Were you surprised that you didn't get the answers that you were hoping for?
I was kind of surprised. It's not that usually a surprise comes all of a sudden. In my case, it came gradually. So in that sense, it's not like but when I was finishing my postdoc at Harvard, I had an offer to start as junior faculty at Cornell University and the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York to continue to do exactly what I was doing, surgery planning, essentially brain mapping for surgery planning. And then I had to look inside, have a conversation with myself, and because there was a lifelong decision. If I decided to become an academic, there was a career that I was starting for a very long time. And then I had this heart-to-heart with myself. And I realized that the reason I decided to pursue medical school, neurology, neuroscience, and all of that was because I wanted to understand how the brain creates consciousness. By the time I had that offer and I was going to become a faculty, I was already wondering and actually thinking, well, I think maybe it's not the brain that creates consciousness at all, and might be the other way around. It might be the case that consciousness is creating the brain and everything else.
It's really strange how, and I appreciate and respect your science background, but it's fascinating and strange how once you start to look at this, then you're at the chicken or the egg conundrum.
Yes.
Which is first? I think that this is me talking. You're the one with all the fancy letters. I don't have those. But here's the problem. This is where science has got it wrong. I've argued this with some very brilliant people. This is where they get it wrong. If you are saying that chemistry creates consciousness, right? It's a chemical reaction at some point. And that's where it is. And you can measure and quantify some of the craziest stuff, then why can't you measure and observe the moment that chemistry creates consciousness? You can't have the argument both ways. You can't just dismiss it. And if you have the ability to measure, to ask the question, to measure and observe just about anything, right? Quarks, right? Then what's the problem here? And if you can't do it, then it comes from somewhere else. What is wrong with thinking that way? And science just has drawn the line in the sand, haven't they?
It's you're thinking in the right way. Science is a third-person reality method, right? So science is, first of all, science is one philosophy. It's one way to probe reality and learn about it. Science doesn't have the monopoly of how we learn about what's real and what's not. It's only one of the ways. And most importantly, science is a method. There's this so-called scientific method, right? And every method is based on certain assumptions and in premises that the method was not developed to challenge its own assumptions. Where am I getting to with that? One of the implicit assumptions of science is that reality is one. There's only one reality, and that reality is absolute. It's objective, and it's shared by all of us. So one premise of science is that each one of us can see an angle of reality, but it's not that we actually have multiple different realities. That's not an assumption of science. Also, An assumption of science is that the physical world is fundamental. Physical particles are fundamental. That's an assumption that science cannot prove either way, true or false. That's an assumption. The matter is what it is. It's the real deal. And then if we are conscious beings, even though there's absolutely no physics out there to explain consciousness and to explain how matter becomes conscious, there isn't a physics there. I mean, there's a lot of conversation around quantum consciousness and quantum physics being what gives way to consciousness, but that's not what hard science says. Like quantum physics is the closest thing we have to that would allow the universe to have consciousness. But by only looking at the physics, at quantum physics, you'll never derive from that physics that consciousness is something that exists. And we only know that consciousness exists because we are conscious beings. So think of the example that I always use. Think of pain, physical pain. You break your arm, you feel pain. It was never science who discovered the existence of pain, right? There's no need for a scientific experiment to go out there and figure out, well, is there such a thing called pain? The question wouldn't even make sense from a purely scientific perspective. We only know pain exists because we feel it consciously. We have that experience, that conscious experience. So back to what I was saying then, because science is based on the assumption that physicality is fundamental, then like logically, per that assumption, consciousness has to be a byproduct of brain activity and physical processes. That has to be, because if everything comes from matter, then consciousness also has to come from matter.
But isn't that a cop-out? Isn't that weak? Isn't that weak? That's something a 5-year-old would say.
It's absolutely weak. And
Yes.
I think there is, and I think that scientists they lack some intellectual honesty here, because it's not exactly their fault. The whole world works around the assumption that matter is fundamental. Were that not the case, we'll not be afraid of dying, for example. Like, why are people afraid of dying? Because they believe they are their bodies. Like, if the brain stops working, they are no more. And that everybody works under that. It's not only science and scientists. It's everyone. It's the whole society. The whole society is based on that assumption. And then if you don't go back to how the assumption was created and revisit it, you're going to be in a trap. It doesn't matter how intelligent you are as a person or as a system, AI, whatever. If your intelligence is based on the wrong assumption, you'll never get out of it. Unless
that's a brilliant point. And so let me jump in on this just a little bit.
Right.
That assumption that when the brain goes and the body shuts down, that's it. You become fertilizer, right? And that's it. You've achieved your place in evolution.
Your consciousness is gone, right?
Right. That is a new thought. That's a new thought from reductionist, materialist, atheist, scientific dogma.
You mean historically recent thought?
Yeah. It's historically a recent assumption and thought process, because before that, there wasn't a culture on this planet that believed that.
But we had a problem back then, which was lack of consensus.
Oh, for sure. But when, like I said, the materialistic, determined, reductionist view of science and of us and of existence is what brought that idea on. And it's a new thought. I would say that's probably a 300-year-old thought.
Yeah, it's not very old.
No,
it's not very old. But before that, the world was very it could be difficult, which hunts were based on on the lack of
Yes.
science, right?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes.
science was a great gift. I think it was a great way to evolve our thinking and the way we think about it, and it was very useful and helpful for a very long, for all these years, centuries now. But if we don't revisit the essential assumption, we are not going to make progress understanding other types of realities, like first-person reality, which is the only reality we know to be true, right? It's what we live, what we experience, what we know.
Unless you do DMT, we'll talk about that later.
But that's first-person too, right?
Well, that's a really good point. It's a first-person view of another reality.
Yeah.
That purely exists in this reality. It's not any different. It's just a different dimension or reality. We'll jump back into that later. And here's the other thing that I struggle with. If you are a theoretical physicist, any physicist, and you're working on stuff, and let's just pull out string theory, right? Just for an example. Let's pull out string theory. You want to work on that, and you are convinced that filaments vibrate and determine what a particle is. Okay. All right. But you can't figure out consciousness. That shows me how little we actually know.
We know very little.
Very little.
We are prehistorical beings. I think alien contact, if it ever happens, hopefully it will. That will be like a reset of the history count, the timeline count. History will start over. Right? Because
for sure.
That's when that's the type of change in understanding that cause that kind of timeline reset, I think. My understanding is that we are pretty much prehistorical beings. We have no clue.
Well, you mentioned Harvard and Cornell.
Right.
In those academic worlds, I'm not talking about philosophy. And even, you know what? I'm going to say this now. I hope I don't upset you. Philosophy's bullshit. But that's it. That's another thing. It's a whole other thing.
I'm a philosopher. I consider myself to be a philosopher. But
right. Well, what I mean by that is, and please take offense to it. Only that when I've read as much as I can and have of the great philosophers and the great minds, and every time that I do and I finish the research, I sit back and I feel like I've just read through somebody's daddy issues. And philosophy is individual and singular. So any philosopher that wants to wax philosophical and present this stuff to the world, it doesn't apply to anybody else. It only applies to the philosopher that's writing it. And which is if they wrote like that, saying, this is my take on things, this is my life, I'm okay with that. But you can't apply that in a broad stroke of a paintbrush.
You should take a course that I'm starting to teach. It's called What Does It Mean to Be Human? In parentheses, versus alien. It's a philosophy course.
Well, okay, but that's okay. That's fine. And the reason why that is fine is people can relate to it and or not relate to it, but look at an alternative view of this. That's totally fine. But when you go and I don't want to name philosophers and stuff, but Kant, full of shit. And that's my take. I've read so much. So anyway, but I
think a lot of it is you have many different types of philosophies, right? And when it comes to consciousness, a lot of what varies across those philosophies is the fundamental assumption that they are making. So some philosophies, they are more materialistic, like when it comes to consciousness, and some philosophies are more idealistic, meaning they assume that ideas, not ideals, but ideas are the fundamental core of existence, that all physical existence, all existence comes from ideas. One way to think about that is if you think of the universe, like you know that math is not an invention. Math is a discovery, right? Like that's how mathematicians consider math, that when they have a new finding, it's a discovery. It's not something that they invented. Meaning math has been around ever since the universe existed, right? And then the question becomes, was math created with the universe? Was it created before the universe, or is it a consequence of the universe existing, right? And idealists like Plato, for example, and other philosophers, they would say, well, math had existed before. Math is a condition for the physical universe to exist. There is no physical universe, if you cannot measure it. And if you can measure things in this universe, math automatically exists.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
So it really depends on the assumption.
Daniel, I'm going to interrupt you again because you just made an extraordinary point. I want you to expand on it. Let's back up.
Right.
Our universe, 13.8 billion years. All right. But that's not the beginning of time. That's just where we are in this space of space. Consciousness is forever. And outside of our universe, space continues. And in an infinite and ageless way. So consciousness has always been here. I don't think it joined our universe. It entered our universe, but it already existed forever, infinitely. And infinitely is a pretty big number.
Consciousness based on that philosophy, which is the philosophy I apply to my life and to my school and all of that. Mm-hmm. That's idealism. It's one type of philosophy. And that's the philosophy that says idealism is related to ideas, but if you understand that consciousness has fundamental existence, like we were discussing before, third-person reality and first-person reality, right? First-person reality, science assumes that third-person reality is the fundamental one. Therefore, first-person experiences have to be deriving from physical activity. But if you assume first-person reality, which is conscious reality, to be fundamental, then all matter, all time, all space-time derives from consciousness.
Now, let's stay right here. And I'm with you, okay? Where does consciousness reside? What is the address? Where is its home?
If you assume consciousness to be primary, the question doesn't apply.
Exactly. Because it's everything.
Because it's out of space-time, outside of space-time, right? The question doesn't apply. So
and that's a non-trivial point.
Very
that is a hugely fundamental point, right? Yeah. I mean, it's a really big point. How do you wrap your head around the ginormity of that assumption? Because that's a big one. That's the biggest.
It's so difficult to wrap your around it. And that's the reason we essentially almost don't discuss that in society at large. It's only in smaller circles. And hopefully, as disclosure develops, we're going to be discussing more and more of that, because we've been living. There is a good chance. The thing is, there's no way to prove or disprove these things scientifically, because science was made under one of the assumptions. So you cannot use science to disprove the assumption of science. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, it's a choice. The world has been functioning for 300 years based on the assumption that matter is fundamental.
That's right.
So for us to change that assumption, it'll be a while.
I don't think so. No, I don't think
well,
so.
maybe it could be happen fast. Yeah.
I don't think so. Well, here's the other, the conundrum that science finds themselves in. A scientist will tell you that science is nothing but a string of corrections. If you're a scientist and you've done something and you develop something and you've got something from theory to almost a fact, you are going to be proven wrong. Somebody's going to come along, and you got to have thick skin, right? Because that's what science is. It's a series of corrections. Well, all of those physicists and scientists and chemists and biologists that have brought up the question of consciousness, that say that it's a physical thing, it's a chemical attribute, they are going to be proven wrong. If that's the assumption that you are in right now, somebody's going to prove that wrong.
Yeah, sometimes science is just that wrong. A lot of times science is not necessarily wrong. It just has part of the picture, an incomplete picture of nature. And scientists, when they are faced with these questions, well, is there a multiverse? There's no way to prove that. And they are like, if there's no way for them to prove that, they dismiss it. Like as if the universe care about science at all. The universe doesn't care, like nature doesn't care about science. Science is a method that we created. But then what scientists do is that if a potential reality is outside of the method, then it's readily dismissed because it cannot be either proved to be real or unproved to be real.
Well, and I keep interrupting you. You're making such good points. Let me respond.
Sure.
Here is the crazy part about all of this. When you look at physics and you take physics at its face value, where they will tell you if you observe something, you can change its state. Now, what kind of voodoo black magic crap is that you can look at something and change it? Well, that's physics.
That's quantum physics, right?
Yeah. And so the multiverse, 11 dimensions in string theory. Or more. Right. And on parallel realities, quantum computers, entanglement. The way a qubit works is unproven science fiction. It's the most science fiction that you can create. Okay, so it's an entangled particle that's in another parallel reality, and it entangles with that, and then we have three states, and then that. Well, what are you saying? Well, I don't know, but it works. Well, they will say all of that, but they struggle with consciousness.
Yeah, because it's outside of the scope of science. Science cannot discover consciousness. It's like I don't know how to put that, but it's impossible for science to discover the existence of consciousness. So what do we do? What is science currently doing? Scientists don't deny the existence of consciousness. Why? Because
they have it.
Yeah, that's the only reason. That's the only reason. Because from a scientific perspective, consciousness is paranormal. From a purely scientific perspective, forget about scientists who are conscious. From a purely scientific perspective, consciousness doesn't exist. There's no such a thing as experience for the scientific method if you don't have a conscious scientist. Like given to its own devices, meaning left to its own devices, science with unconscious instruments cannot discover the existence of consciousness. So we've discovered consciousness because we have the instrument. We are the conscious instrument. So let's say Harvard is running this study on happiness, for example. It has been running for decades. Conscious happiness is something that doesn't exist to instruments. Pain doesn't exist to instruments. You cannot measure pain objectively. As a neurologist, I had to ask my patients, on a scale from 1 to 10, how bad is your pain? That's me, the scientist, using a non-scientific method, as I'm actually asking the patient who is a conscious instrument.
Yeah, you don't have a meter going 10.
Even
showing,
though I could have a meter of correlates of pain, I could measure neural activity. But where is the physics that we don't even have the physics to explain how consciousness emerges from physical activity? We don't have the physics. But even if we had the physics, you still wouldn't know how it feels like to experience that physics. So some aspect of reality would be always hidden from you. It's like you are a blind person. And then I am a scientist. So let's use another example that is funner, I think. Orgasm.
Okay.
Okay. So you're familiar with that, right? Try to explain to a child, because they will ask, oh, mom, dad, I heard about orgasm. What is it? You can use all the science you like. You can use all the scientific method. You can use all the instruments to explain to a child what an orgasm is. The child will not understand what an orgasm is until they have it. Well,
yeah, that's true. No, that's true. That's true. This is how I would explain it. Men have died. Countries have fallen for orgasms, but we don't know what they are.
But
That's
you
crazy.
only know that aspect of the universe. You only know that aspect of reality if you yourself experience it. And also there's a whole lot of things that only exist in consciousness. Meaning is one of them. Like a third person reality is a very dull place. It's a meaningless place. Meaning only happens in consciousness. It only happens in first person reality. Like knowing. Think of a book. A book can encode a lot of knowledge, right? But does the book know the knowledge it contains? No, in thesis, as far as we can tell, knowing doesn't happen inside the book. And then we'll think, well, knowing happens inside the brain. But the brain also is a system for encoding information, just like the book. It's encoded in physicality. So how come the book doesn't know the knowledge it has, and then all of a sudden the brain now knows the knowledge it has? We don't know that. We don't know that the brain knows. We know that the brain processes information.
Right. What you are doing right now, communicating knowledge, you're telling a story, right? You're telling a story. You're telling that trait of what consciousness gives us as a gift is what makes us so special, and we don't appreciate it. It's the ability to tell a story, to share a thought, to share knowledge, to suggest that that's an accident from chemistry is inconceivable to me.
It is inconceivable to me too.
Yeah, it's way too magical. It's way
too
magical.
Yeah, and it's funny to realize that consciousness is magical because there's no consciousness is the woo. There's no difference between the woo and consciousness and pain and love and knowing. All of that are woo material. They're
woo material.
They are woo material. But then how does this work? Why do we assume love to be non-woo, consciousness to be non-woo, pain to be non-woo? Because there's consensus. That's the only reason science doesn't have a problem with love. because there is consensus around that, and because scientists won't argue about that, then it's a scientifically accepted fact. But wait a minute, that's human scientists accepting a fact. It's not science. It's not objectively measured phenomena revealing the existence of all of that. You know what I mean? Like you don't have an instrument to measure love. You don't have an instrument to measure pain. You don't have an instrument to measure consciousness. None of that exists to objective science. And then why do we accept then human sciences, subjective sciences, and all of that? Well, because we don't have any other way. But people never make that disclose. And scientists in those fields, they never make a disclose that the object of their study doesn't really have objective existence. They assume to have that to be a given. Yeah.
As a neuroscientist and a neurologist, how perfect is the invention of the human brain? Is it the most fantastical thing in the universe? It's got to be up there. The human brain is amazing.
Well, the universe is a big place. It's a wonderful.
Right. But you understand what I'm saying and asking. Our brain is crazy cool. It's nearly perfect.
Well, so this might sound off-putting, but as a neurologist and a neuroscientist, I came to understand the brain as not that very different than the kidney, the liver, the heart, and now that we have AI was developed based on how brains work, right? AI started decades ago as neural networks and studies of neural networks. And then it kept evolving to the point that we have AI today. And we are past the Turing test. Like we've been, I don't know if you're familiar with the Turing test, but if you
very much so.
Yeah. So in my opinion, that's being overcome. That it's a challenge that if we are talking to AI and you don't know that it's AI, there's no way for you to tell that that's not a human, right? On the other side. So that's the essence of the Turing test. So, and then if you think about it, the brain can be it's amazingly complex, but just as this thing that we just invented, AI, all it takes is a lot of the same kind of structure. You need like all of those billions of neurons, or just as we need those billions of transistors or CPUs or whatever, however you count them, servers, computers. When you have a whole lot of determined type of resource applied in a certain way, it will behave as a human does.
Well, they tried that in Switzerland with the Brain Project, and which I did a lot of research on, did a couple of shows on it. And their goal was, and it's still running, their goal was, if we construct a computer with trillions of connection points, with the same count as the human brain, then once we get to that number and exceed it, the system will act like a human brain. So that was the goal. Well, they did that like 5 years ago. They got to that number. It's a crazy number. They got there. You know what happened?
Yeah. It's like the most recent AI models. They are all based on trillion what again? There's a unit there. Yeah. So, and that's why it's a matter of scale. So biology was able to find scale. But then I think that's how far biology went, to be honest. Like biology created AI before we did, using biology, using another type of technology in a sense. But the brain, in my view, only becomes that amazing. I mean, the brain is amazing. There's a whole lot of things that the brain... My only point is that we are achieving the same kind of amazingness artificially. So then, does that make the brain less amazing or the technology more amazing? This all left this to each one to decide, right?
Well, but okay, this is where consciousness comes into play. So let me
Exactly.
ask you this.
Yeah.
No matter what, it's still software. And I'll give you an example. You like the color red. I'm just making this up. But you like the color. Why do you like the color red? Because when you were growing up and you were 3 years old, 4 years old, your next door neighbor had a red Corvette. And you would go over to his house and it would sit in the driveway and you'd watch him wash it. And you would go up and touch it and feel it and run your hand, smell the soap and the water from the car. And you looked at this, and AI will never have that.
Well,
it
we
doesn't
don't
have
know.
that interaction. It doesn't have the joy. Why do you like pineapple on your pizza? Because
We
you
don't
bit
know
into
that.
it. What's that?
We don't know that. We don't know if AI will never have that.
When will AI be able to go and experience biting into a pizza?
Maybe it already does. I mean, for that, it will have to be embodied AI, right?
You can write it into code, but AI will never have that tactile experience. And you brought up orgasms. Is AI going to go have sex with another
what is the
computer?
physical principle that you are using to come to that conclusion? So what is it in physics that tell you that biology is different than silicon? I mean, I'm not disagreeing. I don't know the answer, but
Right.
how do you know the answer?
How do I know? I just feel in my bones that the experience of walking your dog down the street and raising that dog from a puppy is something that AI will never experience. It's impossible. It resides on a chip. It's not in a physical existence. It could be in an augmented reality, but will it be able to go and clean up dog poop off of the sidewalk and have that experience? No.
Well, how would you then understand aliens to be if they come make contact and they turn out to be silicon based?
Here's the problem with that. It won't happen. And the reason why is when we breathe in oxygen, what do we exhale? Carbon dioxide.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Silicon-based life form would breathe in our atmosphere, breathe in oxygen, and exhale what? Sand. Okay? No, I'm being serious.
All right.
So the way that carbon bonds with everything else, it's a perfect glue and it just works right. Silicon, although it has that attribute, that bond is a weak bond. And it'd be nearly impossible to evolve. But again, to give you an example, the silicon life form here would step off the flying saucer and literally exhale sand.
But then you have the Virginia case, for example, where it seems like they were breathing some other type of gas, like a sulfur and things like that. What does that make them then? If it's all based on the type of gas you used to.
Well, so you have to understand if it's what you're inhaling and what are you exhaling. And so if you're going to exhale on this planet as if we were silicon based, if humans were not carbon based, they were silicon based, we would exhale sand. Okay, so something else from another planet, it's probably carbon based, but maybe they are running on a different atmosphere and system. Well, they would have to come here with tanks and an artificial atmosphere to survive. But us being silicon or a silicon life form, breathing in oxygen, nah.
I tend to agree with that. Current AI is not conscious, but I don't have the means to tell that. I don't have the means to prove that even you are conscious, or
no. But
I know that I am conscious.
But that's a really good point, Daniel. Let me ask you about this, and then when we come back after the break, I want to talk about some of the brain scans and the measurements that you had done. I think that's very important, what you learned from that. But staying here, if I've got like 5 thoughts. Okay, what was the question again?
The question was like if an alien comes and it's silicon based.
I got it. No. Computers being sentient and conscious. If physicists had their way and biologists had their way, and that every particle has got a little piece of consciousness in it, right? That's their thing. That's what they believe. Then computers and these giant server farms have a lot. These AI situations have a lot of particles in them, a lot. So why hasn't consciousness arisen from a server farm? Why hasn't it?
That's my point. Maybe it has. So maybe consciousness doesn't only come from quantum systems, but any systems that are large and complex enough, but that we believe them to be deterministic, but maybe they aren't. Maybe they are more, maybe the larger and more complex, the more nodes a system has, which is an idea related to integrated integrated information theory, IIT, by Tullio Tononi. Maybe that's what allows, I don't think that's what creates consciousness, the complexity of the physical system, but maybe that's what allows consciousness to intervene in matter in a more direct way. And quantum systems, by being very stochastic, and non-deterministic in nature, that's where consciousness flourishes, because the physical system allows consciousness to express itself through those systems.
Well, okay, so then what happens to free will? And if determinists have their way, God, they just make me so angry, that where they laugh at free will, right? They always, as soon as it comes up, they crack a joke, right?
I think there is only one hope for free will, and I do believe in free will. I believe free will exists. Neuroscientifically speaking, free will doesn't exist, because will is a byproduct of brain activity, and brain activity is subject to all sorts of physical laws and constraints, right? So there's nothing free. There is, neuroscientifically, there is will, but that will isn't free. And if you pay attention to our lives, most of our wills are more like wants. Like, I want to have that house, I want to have that car, I want to have, marketing creates our wants. But that's not how we create reality. That's more related to the idea of free will. So the idea that for free will to exist, consciousness will have to be fundamental. And free will would be the most fundamental aspect of consciousness. Meaning, if consciousness is the most fundamental thing, consciousness creates reality, and reality is an expression of consciousness free will. It could have created anything else and had the will to create whatever, what is. And that's, for free will to exist, consciousness has to be fundamental. If matter is fundamental, there's no hope. Based on the physics, we know at least that for free will to exist, because either free will in that case is Newtonian, deterministic, or relativistic. They're all deterministic. Or free will is quantum, quantum doesn't solve all of the problems, because quantum might be maybe non-deterministic, right? But that doesn't make it free. Quantum is random. Quantum is stochastic. Quantum is all about the probability of you finding a certain measurement. When you go there and measure the atom, the electron, the position of the electron, quantum is about giving you a curve, like a cloud of probabilities. And a cloud of probabilities is not free probability. It's not free creation. You know what I mean? Creation, yes. For creation to be really free, it has to happen in another layer. It has to be So in other words, quantum is not giving rise to consciousness. If anything, it's consciousness giving rise to physicality, which includes quantum mechanics and all the and new stuff that we are going to keep finding and discovering. But
Well,
yeah,
here, I love this conversation. And when I listen to a physicist or read what a physicist has to say about the subject, um, they are only staying in their lane. They don't want to. If we go back, that 300-year mark is very important that we brought up earlier.
yeah,
And so that 300-year mark, prior to that, and when we look at any of the broad strokes of advancement that we have made, both in philosophy, in life, in math, in music, in physics, whatever it may be, uh, antibiotics, right? These all came from somebody that thought outside of the box, that wasn't staying in their lane.
it all
Today,
started as an idea.
yeah. Today, everybody just wants to stay in their lane. They just, it's a funding issue, right?
It's how you find. Yeah, you have to become expert. It's a very tough world for generalists. The world we live in. Like people expect you to be the master of one trade, and you're not even allowed to have curiosity about other things.
Yeah, put that constraint on somebody like Isaac Newton, who was badass in everything that he touched, right? Mathematics, physics, religion,
Right.
alchemy, right? Everything that he didn't have those constraints. He just thought, and he stayed outside of the box. That's what we lack today. We absolutely 100% lack that.
Yeah. And we are replacing that with AI because AI knows everything about anything. Right?
Are you an AI guy?
I use it a lot for work, and it helps it helps me expand, and it helps me do much more than I was able to until recently. But I have to be cautious all the time, because if it's very easy for you to just stop thinking, and if you start delegating everything to AI. So I use AI to expand my brain, so to speak. But if there is a risk of it replacing my brain.
Yeah, totally. And
so you gotta be watchful.
Yeah, the hallucinations that happen with AI and the stuff that it makes up and invents.
I think that's not even the worst problem. The worst problem is you forgetting who you are and you don't do anything else. You don't take any action. You don't make any decisions if you don't ask AI first.
Right. I was reading about, there's a lot of people, we got to take a break here in a few seconds. There's a lot of people that like to travel. I like to travel. I travel a lot. And so, and they go and they'll do a search. What's the coolest place to go and hike to? And I'll make something up, in Costa Rica. Right. And it comes back, you need to go to Angel Falls, and here are the directions. And it's amazing, right? So they go, they get off the plane in David, and they take a taxi to this road, and they're in the middle of nowhere. They're like, what's going on? And it turns out that it was a hallucination. And this happens a lot, man. I mean, this isn't just some one-off thing.
The angels.
Oh, I just made it up. Made it up. There's
an angels thing at Zion's National Park.
Oh, yeah. I just made all that up. But there are, when you follow the press releases, there's 50 stories a day like that, but here's the other part that I'm fascinated with, and it's proteins.
Okay.
Proteins. I sound like I'm a PhD. I'm not a postdoc. I'm not a postgrad anything. I barely made it through art school.
Well, I may sound like a philosopher, but I never studied really. Like,
Yeah, right.
I don't have a
Fair
PhD
enough.
in philosophy, even though it's a doctor of philosophy, but that's neuroscience. Go figure.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. But proteins are so complex. Like it's the most complex thing that, and before AI and before computers, proteins, that was like off limit shit. It was just too complicated. Can't map a protein by hand.
Right.
Taking decades, hundreds of years with a team of very brilliant minds behind it. Now, AI today can map proteins and create. It's insane to me. What I don't want is AI to hallucinate proteins because we're getting lazy, right?
But
And
hallucination, you can. There are ways to treat it. For example, by using other models, right, to check the work and check for sources and all of that.
yeah, they've achieved it, and it's a very exciting time when you look at the amount of, and I'm speaking to somebody who's a doctor and a neurologist, but when you have a goal and you put your doctors on a mission to do something, whatever it may be, and it may take 10 doctors 10 years, or it may take 20 doctors 20 years, whatever it is, but it takes a long time. And so to take that and remove the time element, and the same project, you throw it on AI and it's done in a few minutes. And when you wake up in the morning, you can look at the results and look at that's pretty exciting. That's the part.
Yeah, it's exciting because we can all retire now and let AI do the work.
Yeah. See, you don't have a job anymore. You can come work for me.
Why would I need one if I can do everything?
I know, right? Let's take our break. Daniel, fascinating conversation. Tonight we're talking about consciousness, everybody, my favorite subject. And Daniel, stay right there. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? Go to JimmyChurchRadio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com.
All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Daniel Branco is with us. We're talking about consciousness. He's a neuroscientist. He's a neurologist, and he is now a part of our community. And I love that. Daniel, would it surprise you that ET lands flying saucer in Los Angeles, in San Diego, right?
Preferably San
And
Diego.
yeah, preferably San Diego, and lands, and they step off and they go, you know what, man? All that math shit, that's passe. It's all about consciousness. And when you get that figured out, come back and talk to us. See ya. Would it surprise you to hear that from ET?
I think we've been hearing that from them in a sense, indirectly, not overtly. I think that if, to answer your question very objectively, I think that if they land here, if they objectively, measurably land here, they're going to have an objective and measurable conversation. Otherwise, what would be the point? Just showing up. I mean, that's not how they operate. That's not how, what do I know, right? But based on observations and everything that we've been tracking, that's just not what they do. I don't think they would show up just to make a point and they'll be gone. Or maybe that's what they did historically in all the accounts in the Bible and all of that. Maybe that's what it was, because we are not ready to understand any better. If we are prehistorical beings now, let alone back then, right? But I think that if they've been showing up very clearly for so many people, and messages coming all the way, all the time, and new understandings, there's a new paradigm being shifted. One thing that I did years ago, I started watching in Brazil, growing up, I was very much used to seeing, not channeling, but like a mediumship. People,
a lot of that there. Yeah.
People losing their consciousness to incorporate a being, not necessarily an extraterrestrial being, but like beings of all sorts. So I was kind of used to that growing up. It's culturally accepted and even religiously accepted in Brazil. And when the whole ET conversation started to come back again more strongly, starting 9 years ago, I started watching many ET channeling because I wanted to understand if there was a pattern there. And if you go and watch many different channelers channeling ETs, specifically claiming to be channeling ETs, there is a pretty consistent message. There is a pretty consistent understanding coming from those channelers or entities, whatever is going on there. If it's the universe, the brain, because even if it's imagination, where does imagination come from? We don't have a scientific theory of imagination, to be honest. Imagination is the woo too, but at the same time, as you were hinting to at before, imagination is the source of all reality. Everything that we've created at some point was imagination. So if imagination is the source of reality, or at least some aspects of it, imagination cannot be less, as the source, it cannot be less real than reality itself. The source of something has to be as real as the thing that source created, right? So I think we have a pretty good understanding at this point of ET philosophies, in a sense, based on the communications we've been having from them.
Right. When somebody from that deterministic scientific crowd tries to suggest, and they do to their audience, to their believers, that all of this DNA consciousness was just an accident. It was just something that happened. That's it. There's nothing more to observe here than that. And when we are done, we are just done. That doesn't make any sense. where you look at the odds of that happening. And what they suggest, Daniel, as you know, well, lightning struck a crystal in a creek bed and DNA happened.
Yeah.
Wait. So out of that lightning strike, we have dreams, right? We have all of this fantastic thought from an accident. No, it is much more divine than that. And I don't know what those answers are, but I can tell you what it isn't. It's not an accident. It's not something that just happened.
Yes. So chance is the favorite explanation, scientific explanation, when you don't have a scientific explanation, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of embarrassing. Scientists should just say, well, I don't know the answer. Like, we haven't got there. So, but chance is a very poor explanation. But the whole thing, like, and that's why the religious view hasn't faded, because science doesn't have the means to explain the things that religion or explains, or spirituality explains, right? And it will never have the means to do so, because it comes from certain assumptions that are great for developing technology, but not great for explaining consciousness and things that are not technological in nature. And hopefully, we are transitioning now to a new society where this whole debate between religion and science will no longer make sense, because, like, if you assume consciousness to be a real phenomenon that is fundamental, then you have right there an opportunity to unify spirituality and in science. And what I'm saying here is that science doesn't have the means to explore and understand fully spirituality. There's no way. For you to fully understand spirituality, you need to be a conscious being. And science as a method, it is not a method of conscious things. Science is a method of inert matter. It's not a method of consciousness. And unless science so what the opportunity that we have here is for us to develop a new understanding, a new philosophy that makes scientific use of conscious experience. And then you have to be flexible with your science standards, scientific standards, because conscious experience cannot be measured. By definition, it just can't. It's an aspect of reality that has to be lived. It cannot be measured. You can measure, and that's what I did as a neuroscientist doing brain mapping. What can be measured are the neural correlates of the experience. But the experience itself cannot be discovered from this side of the veil. Reality is more complex than scientists or even like spiritual people want to believe. It's more complex. It just is. You cannot hope to have a full understanding of reality by only using the scientific approach. You have to make use of other
that's right. And science, there's 2 points that need to be made here. I want your thoughts on. Science cannot explain at all, certainly not to me, how every culture, every civilization on this planet, all the way back throughout history, and I'm talking about ancient history before writing, all developed the exact same thought. Religion, gods, and knowledge from the stars. Every single culture that did not communicate with each other. Explain that to me. Yeah. Now, to me, when we go to fundamental, right? We go to the base of all of this. It's because it happened. Not because it was imagined, because it happened with every single culture on this planet.
It's very
it's very difficult to explain that.
It's very funny, but scientists will have explanations, right? And it's very funny because scientists are so critical of pseudoscience, but they are not critical of pseudo explanations. So a lot of scientific explanations, including chance, including, oh, this was because that's how the psychology of the brain works. That's also pseudoscience. It's pseudo explanation given by a scientist who doesn't know the answer. So a scientist who answer questions they don't have an answer for, they're doing pseudoscience. And they do that all the time.
They do.
They need to fill the gap.
Here, I'm going to make you laugh. This is the answer that you get. Well, it just happened.
Yeah,
right? It's just like
explanation.
That's the best you can do.
Yeah, exactly.
Man.
That's embarrassing. So they shouldn't be doing that. But because science has all this status, and everybody wants to be scientific, which is a shame, to be honest. Like, why do you want to be scientific? And at the end of the day, people want to be scientific because that's how they get validation from others. We have to let go of that. Like, we really have to let go of that need for scientific validation. Science is able to give you scientific validation. Fine. But scientific validation is not the ultimate validation. It's not the supreme validation. It's like science doesn't have the monopoly of validations. You know what I mean? Like that I am a conscious being, that I'm feeling pain. I don't need science to tell me that I'm in pain. Like screw science if science cannot validate my pain. I feel it. I have it. It's my pain. Like I own my pain. I am the own validator. I am my own validator of my own pain. I don't need science to validate it. So why do people keep clinging to that? Like we have to let go of that.
It's because okay. And I want to talk about your NDE and your brain mapping.
Exactly.
But here, this is my take. If you want to get into science, medicine, physics, biology, chemistry, it doesn't matter. If that's what you want to do, you want to pursue that, you must do DMT one time to get your degree. If you are going to run for political office, city council, Congress, whatever it is, mayor of your town, whatever it is, you have to do DMT one time to be able to get on the ballot. And the reason why I say that in such a matter-of-fact way is that you will immediately see that there is something else that is real beyond our reality. And it changes your fundamental understanding and belief system of the universe and what makes us human.
I totally agree. But we don't need that. We
do need it. You need to do it.
I would gladly do it. But my point is, you don't need to do DMT to understand there is a reality that science cannot probe. And that's the reality of consciousness. Like, all it takes is being a conscious being.
No, what they need, all of those scientists and politicians, whatever, they all want receipts and proof. Well, okay, just do it once. That's all you don't have to do it twice. Just do it once. And then it changes your whole worldview on whatever it is that you want your career to be.
Yeah, we definitely need ways to change worldview.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. It's crazy. Yeah. So, and not to stay on DMT, I can have that conversation all night. But for me, because I run a very pure mind, okay, I don't alter my consciousness. I don't smoke pot. I don't do any of that. So I used to. But anyway, so the DMT question through interviews was always there, and I would do interviews about it, but I hadn't had the experience. And so one night I just said, okay, that it's time to do this. So I made the phone call and I went. For me, and I have an open mind about everything, I was not prepared for that experience. that 5-minute reality shift, a true paradigm shift, where I was coming back home after that and thinking about it, how extraordinary the whole thing was. And then it hit me. It was real. Not a hallucination. No, this isn't acid. This isn't mushrooms. That's all recreational drug stuff, whatever. You do that for fun. But people disguise the fun as therapeutic. Well, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. DMT is not that. And when that reality hit me, that everything that I experienced was real, that was the game changer. And so if you're a theoretical physicist that is trying to work on alternate realities or the metaverse, all of these things, parallel worlds, the quantum mechanics of it all and entanglement, if that's your thing and you want to go explore that, do DMT. Do it just once, and then you will understand that there is another reality out there, and how do you get to it? That's all I'm saying. I'm off of my soapbox, but I think it's an amazing tool. It's a key. It's not a drug. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And let me ask you this. Are these, going back to your NDE, and I want to specifically discuss that, when you go through that experience and you then start to maybe understand or ponder another reality outside of this one, that's a pretty significant step, isn't it? And then when you come back into this world, now you have seen something else. Pretty big change, isn't it?
It was for me, yes.
What happened?
The NDE was related to a heart attack. I was at the gym exercising, and at some point I was doing abdominals. As I stood up, I started losing consciousness. Like when you stand up too fast, you have this. You may lose your vision for a while and get a little bit dizzy, but then it quickly recovers. In my case, that never happened, and it was like this curtain was coming down in front of me, and then I lost consciousness. I was still standing when I lost consciousness, and when I was back, I was laying on the floor with a lot of people from the gym like around me, but I was out for about 10 minutes. It was like a massive heart attack. I got a stent and all. And my experience wasn't that colorful, to be honest. Like many people see a lot of things and see places and see entities and beings or Jesus or all sorts of experience. Mine was simply, I found myself floating in darkness, not a bad place, just dark. There was no information. There was no light information for me to process. There was no color. There was nothing for me to make sense of. I didn't have memory. I didn't have language. I didn't have an identity.
How long were you clinically dead?
Well, about 10 minutes. That's the time I was out.
Woo. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not necessarily dead, but it really depends on how you define that. But that's the time I had passed out. Yeah.
And you said no color. I find that very, very interesting. When you say no color, was it just black or was
black? Yeah. It was black. Yeah, the feeling, I felt like a monad. It was a very primal type of existence, very primal type of consciousness. It's like consciousness with no content. So
were you still thinking?
No, there wasn't Daniel. There wasn't identity. There wasn't language. There wasn't thinking. There wasn't memory. All there was the most amazing experience of peace I've ever had. So it was extremely peaceful. And I didn't have a sense of time either. It was just extremely peaceful. But it was a lack of experience. It's funny because some people have NDEs and they feel like they are everything all at once. Like everywhere, all the time. Like, what is the name of that movie again? Like I know the one
Everything, everywhere, all at once. Yeah.
Yes. So some people have that kind of experience. My experience was the opposite. Instead of being everything, I was just a monad. I was like a unit consciousness in a sense, I think. It was consciousness because there was experience, which was the experience of peace. But that was all. Maybe it's the most relatable thing might be being a baby in the belly, like a fetus in a sense. But in my case, there wasn't any temperature. It wasn't warm or cold. It was just pure potentiality in a sense. It was pure peace, but there was no information.
So, in my NDE or my death experiences, I should say, I didn't meet or see anybody either. And it was, there was a lack of color. That's why I asked you about that.
A lack of color?
So, yeah. So with me, and I don't want to spend too much time on this. I'm going to just talk to you. But I was sitting in this void at a white round table that there was a light source above it that was lighting up the table. And I was sitting writing orchestral sheet music. And as I wrote the notes down, the music would play in real time. And this went on and on and on and on and on. But there were no walls. There was no floor. Everything was black. There was black, 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 black. It was just this white table, sheet music, and me writing. And I could hear the music. But I didn't see any bright light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't meet anybody. I didn't see my past lives. There was no review. There was no panoramic flight of, panchromatic, existence of, none of that. I didn't have any of that, but I was happy. I was in my spot. When I popped out of it, after 4 days, when my eyes opened, I was pissed. Yeah,
I didn't want to go back to.
It was a beautiful. It was pretty incredible. It was pretty incredible. At the time, I didn't know that these were, resuscitations and that I was in this coma. I didn't know any of that when I first opened my eyes. In fact, I didn't even find out about that for 2 more weeks. But yeah, it was very strange. I listened to other people's experiences. I didn't have any of that.
The musical thing I had in my experience was that as I was coming back to the body and recovering consciousness, human consciousness or consciousness, embodied consciousness, I felt like as I was coming back to biology in a sense, I felt like there were like a million drums beating around me. It was that's the musical part. It was so noisy. It was so noisy because I was coming from such a place of peace, of profound peace, that just being back in the body was extremely noisy. And then I realized that the noise was not coming from the streets, the environment. It was the noise of my own biology, of my own body, the machinery of the body. And that's noise we don't usually perceive because it's always there. And I'm not sure it was physical noise, like a sound. I don't think it was sound. It's a vibration of some sort that I didn't have in that state. And I came back to having again when I was coming back to the body. And it was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me to think about because through the commotion, all of this happened really quick when I opened my eyes. And so the doctors were signaled, and suddenly my hospital room was full of, I don't know, maybe a dozen or more doctors and whatever. I have no idea, but I was confused. and I was upset. All right. Now they're coming in. I had IVs in both arms. I was confused about that. I had stuff stuck to my chest, and I was confused about that. I couldn't move, and I'm watching this commotion around me. Everybody was just, and I wanted to go back. So I was like, screw this, man. This sucks. So I closed my eyes and I tried to go back and I couldn't. And I've never been back, by the way. I've never had the experience again. I was pretty pissed off though, man. I was like, man, no. I don't want to put up with this. And I just closed my eye and no, I never went back. Never saw it again.
I never had my experience again, but for years I was kind of wishing to be back in that place again, that place of so much peace. And then with time, I was learning how to build peace in my own life. Never to the same type, same intensity, so to speak, or quality of peace, but I was building peace. I learned how to build peace in my life. And that was something that I started seeking after my ND.
Yeah, me too. I tried to be less of a dick, but I still am too.
That's one way to put it, because being a dick comes with discomfort. Like you're not in peace when you're being a dick, right? Like I surely became less of a dick after my NDA as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a medical term.
Yes.
That's a philosophical term.
Yeah, we learned that in the first day.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I want to go back to your brain scans. I'm fascinated with that. So you're learning, you're a doctor now, you're doing all of this prep and stuff, and you're doing these scans and looking at this. What did you see or what did you not see? Were there things that you were looking for and hoping for? Take me through the process.
Yeah, my expertise was in brain scans of memory, particularly memory lateralization. Essentially, fMRI is a technique that helps you find the neurocorrelates of brain activity. So you have the patient in the MRI scanner, and you have them doing certain activities related to what you want to measure. So if you want to map areas of language, you have the patient doing language tasks. Could be reading, could be talking, could be thinking of talking. If you want to measure or map areas of motor action, like if I'm doing this right now, this is the classical example. If I'm doing this right now with my right hand here, something is going to be like activating here on my left side of the brain, more or less on this area here. And that's the basics of like a brain mapping. What I did was a lot of the patients had temporal lobe epilepsy, and meaning they were about to have part of their temporal lobe removed. And the temporal lobe is very much related to the encoding of new memories. And that's something we learned, I think was in the 50s by Dr. Penfield in Montreal. He removed both hippocampi of patients, and people lost the ability to encode new memories. Like the movie, The 50 Dates or something like that, where the girl
50 First Dates. Yeah. Right.
Same idea. She remembers everything that happened before the event or the surgery. In her case, I think it was an accident. I don't remember. But after that, she still remembers everything that happened before, but she's unable to create new memories, right? And that's a very real thing. If we lose both of our hippocampi, we lose the ability to encode new memories.
Wow.
Yeah. So when a surgeon is operating on the temporal lobe, we need to know how much memory how much memory encoding is processed by each one of the hippocampi on each side. And that's what I did in my research.
So you're suggesting that if I was missing those two lobes, that I could bite into a piece of tiramisu, and it's the best tiramisu I've ever had, and I have the experience of, I go through all of that, but I don't remember it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Oh, that would suck.
Yeah. It's so interesting because it speaks a lot to where consciousness is and where it's located, which was one of your questions. It's like, so cerebral functions are very well, a lot of them are very well located in the brain. We know where they are. So in a sense, so we know, for example, that the occipital lobe is responsible for processing images, vision, right? So if you ask a scientist where vision happens in the brain, that's in the occipital lobe. Now, where does the experience of vision happen in the brain? They'll say, well, the occipital lobe. But then you start, and if you keep pushing it, but then how does that create the experience, So we know that that's the part of the brain that processes visual data, visual information, that we know that much. But we don't know that the experience is there.
So you see something that makes you laugh. All right. So that goes in your vision, right? All of those trillions of actions are happening at the same time when you see that, right? Okay. Right. So we have that part. Man, I sound so smart sometimes. So those trillions of things are being processed just to see it. But then you laugh, right? Yes. Where does the laughter kick in on the brain?
It's not as well localized.
Really? Yeah. Sadness is not localized.
At least it wasn't back in the day when I was like, I was doing those maps 20 years ago. Yeah.
Right. So you were never, do you have a suspicion? Is there is consciousness in more than one location than another in the brain?
I don't think consciousness is located at all. I don't think it's local. I don't think consciousness is local. So the data processing is local, right? It happens in the neurons. But it's just like quantum mechanics. That's why the quantum mechanics is such an important thing. I don't think it explains everything, but we have non-locality in quantum mechanics, right?
Yeah, so that's something that
exists. And the same, like you can have a physical phenomenon happening in the brain. That doesn't mean that the experience is local, that has any locality at all. It could be outside of space-time. So
how big, I'm going to say non-trivial for the second time in this show, but how non-trivial is the local, non-local question? It's huge, isn't it?
It's very complicated because if you are a scientist thinking of, well, the activity is here. If I remove this area of the brain, the experience is gone. So the experience has to be here, right? It has to be. So it's very easy. It's very straightforward to assume that consciousness is being produced by the brain, by brain activity. And I would say that from a certain angle, it is. Like there's no the experience that we're having here, like the experience I'm having right now, it requires a brain for that experience to happen. So the brain is part of the equation. But that's different than saying that the brain is creating consciousness. For example, consciousness could be pre-existing. Consciousness could be like this field, or could be outside of space-time, in which case it's not even a field. Field is a very, like a physical term. And the brain might be only... So if you go to idealist philosophers like Bernardo Kastrup, the brain is what consciousness look like when it's having a certain type of experience. It inverts the understanding. Instead of like consciousness is how it feels like to have a brain working in a certain way. you invert the logic. Well, the brain working in a certain way is what happens when consciousness is having a determined type of experience.
Well, yeah, that's such a fascinating point, because if we bring something into the picture, like let's say a black hole, instead of death and dying, let's go with a black hole. You get sucked in, I get sucked in, we're in a ship, and we get spaghettified and we turn into a string of particles. Okay.
Yeah.
But what about our consciousness?
So there is
that information that continues, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, and then we have to start separating things. Well, fun fact, there is new research that came up this month suggesting that our universe exists inside of a black hole. Just like that's a fun fact, which is not necessarily ultra super surprising. What was the rationale?
Okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense actually.
Yeah, so every black hole would be a gateway to another universe, which is interesting. But what about consciousness? So there is one thing. One thing is the experience of being Daniel, right? Individuals. If our bodies get spaghettified, then that experience is no more, right? In thesis, I think that the experience is no more. But then when I say no more, that implies a continuity in time. So if there is no time, then Daniel can never cease to exist. Like once I exist, I exist. Like there's no non-existing. Because I happen to exist in this location in time. And time is an abstraction. So if there is travel in time, you can always get back there, revisit that moment, reconstruct, rebuild that moment, re-experience that moment. And I think that's something that consciousness can do. Consciousness can experience being Daniel. It can experience being Jimmy at any time, or any of the parallel universes if they exist. Like consciousness has the ability to focus on those experiences, on those realities. Like consciousness as the source of reality has the means to do whatever. That's where imagination lives. Back to the conversation around is reality more real than imagination? It shouldn't, because imagination is the source of reality. At least the many types of reality that we know, like this computer.
Well, when you're at the cafeteria at Harvard, right, and you're sitting around with your other brainiac friends,
right?
Can you have this conversation? Is this something that actually happens?
No, yeah. I mean, my supervisor at the time, Dr. Gobi, she was pretty cool. And she was very busy, which made me. She was a neurosurgeon. She was always operating on people. It was hard to have and when we had the time to meet, we were discussing the research, the brain maps of from the patients that I was studying, so. But it's very difficult for scientists to have philosophical conversations. It's funny because science is one type of philosophy. The scientific method is a philosophical approach. It's a logical approach. But when you get super well trained on that specific philosophy, you have a hard time discussing other types of philosophies, other approaches to understanding reality, right? And you just dismiss whatever you cannot explain, whatever your method. It's just when you have a hammer, everything's a nail. Mm-hmm. There's kind of the opposite of that. When you it's the same, well, or maybe it's the same thing. Like when you have the science, and science is the hammer, and then everything's a nail, and whatever is not a nail, you ignore. It's like it doesn't exist in your reality. It's like reality becomes very selective. For scientists live in a very selective world. They live in the world of things that are potentially explainable by science. But there's a whole lot of things that are, in my understanding, they are not even potentially explainable by science.
Isn't it funny? I'm going to make you laugh. I'm going to make you conscious. I'm going to make you have conscious laughter.
Okay.
Isn't it funny how you can have a philosophy major with a zero or very little interest in science and the hard sciences? But as you move along in philosophy, science, you find that science is needed to help you along in your philosophical journey. And if you are in the hard sciences, and the more you push along in that, you turn a little bit to philosophy to answer some of the things that science is now that is struggling with. And the struggle is real, both in the philosophical world and in the science world, where the two need to kind of coexist, if not completely coexist. Do you find that as funny as I do? Because it's weird how they have a line in the sand. But I'll talk to a physicist that's going, man, I'm starting to take some philosophy classes.
Yeah, because
are you running into the consciousness question, my friend? You know what I mean?
You have some sciences are more like fundamental sciences, like physics, chemistry, biology, and some other are more like disciplines that derive from that sciences. Though, like a medicine relies on biology, right? Engineering relies on physics. So engineering is not exactly a science; it's an application of science, right? It's the science, the base, the underlying science is physics for engineering. The underlying science of medicine is biology, right? So when you are involved with those more fundamental sciences, it's easier for you to see the gaps, I think. Like, and then different people will react in different ways. Like some physicists, there is that famous saying, like in quantum physics, which is, shut up and calculate. Like
That's
when people are trying to make sense of what quantum mechanics means. Like
you get in the philosophy side of it. It's like, dude, get to the whiteboard and do the math.
Do the math, and forget about the interpretation, right? Which is a missed opportunity for you to grow and learn. But anyway, some people will react like that. Stick to the hammer in the nail. Forget about
it's the same
anything
thing it's the same thing with philosophy, though, because there is a certain thing that is deliberate and statistical and mathematical about science that philosophy doesn't give you. Those absolutes, right, that math can give you. So
I mean, the absolutes are given by the sciences, right? But the interpretation of the absolutes get really tricky for science alone to make sense of. But then what happens with the applied sciences like medicine, engineering, is that you get even farther removed from the original questions. You are even less, you are even more removed from, like a physicist might be thinking of the true nature of reality. An engineer who uses physics is not going to be doing that, and he shouldn't. It's like an airplane pilot flying the airplane and thinking about the nature. I mean, as a pilot, and I am, okay, so that's what I fly small airplanes, and you have to know the basics of what makes an airplane fly. Just like
they don't even understand that. But check this, trip on this, Daniel. Absorb this for a second.
Right.
You ready?
I think I am.
You have an airfoil, you have a wing, and we understand what makes a plane fly. The air and the force takes longer to travel over the wing than under the wing. Therefore, the plane flies and lifts, right?
Right.
But then how can a plane fly upside down?
It's essentially, as far as I understand, it's the same effect, but you have to adjust your
no.
Is it not?
No. The point is they don't know.
Really? So I never went deep into that physics.
I'm helping you right now. Look, I'm a guitar player, man. I don't understand this shit, but neither do they. Right? It's crazy. It's crazy. Explain to me how a plane flies upside down. If the airfoil is lifting the plane, therefore you flip it upside down and you're still flying and you're not no, and they don't know. Every physicist when they're met with that, it's a conundrum.
Yeah. So that's funny because that's the perfect example of like a discipline, flying, that it's okay if you don't, like I fly the airplane. I don't, it's okay if I
don't ask questions, man. Just fly it.
Just calculate. Shut up and calculate. Like shut up and like a focus to your flying, to your instrument and all of that, right? So but even in philosophy, like people stay like they keep arguing about what is right and wrong, or what is the true answer for consciousness. And that's a lot of ego, because they want to be right. They want to be the ones to make history, and that's all what it is. Just for philosophy and consciousness, for example, this course I mentioned to you about a human versus alien, that's what I call applied philosophy. I call it applied idealism. And I don't really care to prove or argue that idealism is correct, that consciousness is primary. I'm not concerned about arguing about that. I made a choice. I made an assumption. Since that cannot be proven either way, I made an assumption. It's a working assumption that I use in my life and in my work and everything. I've assumed that consciousness is fundamental, just as science assumed that matter is fundamental. And by assuming that matter is fundamental, a lot was achieved scientifically, a lot of technology. But clearly, science applies to certain aspects of life more easily than it applies to other aspects of life.
Man, that's fascinating. Yeah. Let me ask you this before we run out of time. Another fundamental question from me. I'm trying to understand all of this. When I hear a physicist say that violates the known laws of physics, therefore it cannot be, and I go, wait, whose laws? Our laws?
The known laws.
On the other side of the universe, there are different laws. As we progress and we evolve, we're going to find out about other laws here locally, right? So to say that something can't be because it violates the laws of physics, that's an incorrect worldview.
It's so dumb. It's not even worth it getting involved in those kinds of arguments, because move back 100 years, go 100 years back, and then you tell to a physicist 120 years back, and you tell a physicist, it's possible to have the same particle exist in two different places at the same time. And their answer to you will be, well, that's against the known laws of physics. Right? Right. So why would you even bother having that conversation? Because it's so having a conversation based on the known.
Yeah. How do you know that as a fact? How do you know that you don't
know what as a fact?
That we know all of the known laws of physics. You can't say that as a fact. The only thing we know as a
fact is that we are conscious and we're having an experience.
When I hear a scientist say, I'm not going to name any names, E.T., there's no life out there. We are magic. We have the moon. We have this and that. And we are a singular existence here on Earth. And to suggest that E.T. is traveling here and visiting us is absurd. It would violate all the known laws of physics. I'm like, how can you say that with certainty?
It's so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. It's like a Neil deGrasse kind of thing, kind of approach. It's so embarrassing. It's so intellectually limited. I don't know. It's an expose on ignorance and stupidity. And
Yeah, for sure. Are you surprised that he flipped? He
No,
now believes in
because he-
aliens and that
I'm
they're
not
visiting
surprised
us.
because that's what lower people do. Sorry to use that word, but
Wow.
that's what happens when you don't have what it takes. I'm all for changing your mind. I'm all for it. You have to be open to new ideas, and I'm glad he is open to new ideas, right? But when you're people who are truly open to new ideas, they don't mock new ideas. Mocking new ideas and mocking people who have new ideas, that's not how science works. That's not how philosophy works. That's not how I don't see any. That's only maybe how comedy works. But even smart comedy doesn't use.
Oh God, that was funny.
Like
Woo!
comedy, even like a good, refined comedy, intelligent comedy doesn't make use of that kind of tool, like mocking other people. Like you don't need to mock anyone if you have a point, if you have a case. Mocking is the tool of the weak, of the stupid.
Well, yeah, when you look at you're right though. Galileo mocked, Archimedes mocked, right? Copernicus mocked, Tycho Brahe mocked, right? All of them because they were thinking original thought.
Exactly. That's a great sign that you are human, because it's a very human thing to mock others, but it doesn't tell that you are smart. It doesn't tell that you are intelligent. It doesn't tell that you are a scientist. It just tells that you are average. You're a very average person if you're mocking others, if you're mocking ideas.
Wow, that's strong.
What?
That's strong. That's strong.
It was meant to be. It was meant to be, and I'll second myself.
You know what I say a lot, and I truly mean it. It's like the essence of my being. I love being wrong.
Yeah,
I do. When I'm wrong about something, I've just learned.
Exactly.
That's a powerful thing.
You don't. It's a matter of attachment. You don't want to be attached to your own ideas. You don't want to be attached to beliefs. Believing is already a sign of a lesser intelligence, I think. Believing should not be how things work. People should not abide by beliefs or be proud of believing in anything. Use that as an assumption. Use that as a working assumption. Because beliefs, they close yourself to other ideas, because belief is a dogma. At the end of the day, a belief is a dogma. You might be more or less flexible regarding your beliefs, but beliefs is there. It's like, I decided to believe this. Whereas you could decide to choose an assumption, choosing to assume consciousness comes first, is primary. It changes your life, your own perspective, all of your perspective on life. It changes it. Doing your DMT trip, all of that changes your understanding. One thing is those are very different things. You can have an understanding, or you can have a belief. If you have a belief, it's because you didn't understand. If you need a belief, it's because you're lacking understanding. And if you have an understanding, you don't need to believe it. You just understand it.
You need to be flexible.
You need to be flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're going to be, and thank you for this conversation tonight, Daniel. I look forward to having another one with you. It's just extraordinary. You're in San Diego, but you're going to be speaking at the Transcendence conference, Suzanne Ross's conference coming up. That's going to be great, and hopefully I'll be able to make it down there and see you. What else is going on, and where can everybody chase down your work?
The co-creating school, co-creating.school, that's the website. Co-creating.school, and the Alien versus Human course, it's on co-creating.green. that's the website for that specific course, which is part of the school.
Yeah. Bill and John, if you could get those up in the chat. We do have Daniel Branco, of course, up in the chat, and it's in the description below and over on our website and throughout social media. Daniel, thank you so much. Look forward to breaking bread with you down there in San Diego. Great conversation tonight. Thank you so much.
It was amazing. Thank you, Jimmy. Bye-bye.
Perfect night. Thank you so much. That's exactly why I do the show. Right there. That was a big chunk of me learning something tonight, and I know that you did too. That's why I do the show. Thank you, Daniel. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, Preston Dennett is here, and we are going to be talking to Preston about, does ET have the ability to heal us? That's the conversation tomorrow night. Thank you, Daniel. I'll see everybody tomorrow with Preston Dennett, but for now, all I've got is go back Lee Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go back, Lee Tappy.